In this video, I'll show you how to set up and manage live streams. In this video, I'll show you live streams.
Good morning, everyone. Hair of the Dog's supposed to be alcohol, not more streaming, but this weekend seems like 'tis streaming slayed the beast. Oh, start the clock. Well, no, with the intro, it must be more than 40 seconds, 50 seconds. So, fuck. I'm not as young as I used to be. Okay, I've got to get this out of the way. I didn't want to skip it because I've got a lot of other stuff to do today, so we'll get on. You know how it goes. I'm sure others will turn up for Paul Anvil. You know how it goes. You know how the whole premise of the show is. It's kind of a satire on how uninformed a lot of commentators are. I just get up of a Monday morning, the worst time possible, grab a bunch of headlines and opine on them, even though I probably know very little other than what I'm immediately reading, and I react to it. So it's kind of a satire, but then occasionally there's a story that I do know about, and it's an opportunity for people to get the news from someone who isn't unbearably chipper first thing in the morning. Hopefully the sound levels are all right today. They were a bit odd last night. We'll see. Right then. Right, said Fred. Both of us together. One each end, and here we go. However it goes. I'll Steady as we go. That's what it is. Okay, let's get this done. Not that it's a chore, you lovely people. Right. First up, Brexit. So Boris Johnson is still being bullish, even though he has a majority of minus 50 at this point, I think. Is it since the weekend? It's got to be somewhere down around there. And even though even the IRA's political wing, Sinn Féin, are seriously thinking about swearing allegiance to the Queen and then recanting just so they can take up their seats in Parliament to stop him fucking over Northern Ireland. But there we go. But yeah, he's off to his first actual proper negotiations and meetings in Europe, and he's already told Juncker, Jean-Claude Juncker, who's like the current but outgoing president of the European Commission, which is kind of like our prime minister. It's like the head of the executive, only he's more democratically accountable than Bojo is, oddly. But he said to tell him that no matter what, we have to leave on October 31st. I think being so inflexible and bullish about this may well end up being his downfall, because I cannot see any way in which he can do that. I don't think there's any way he can deliver it. And if he does go past that 31st of October deadline, the Tories' electoral chances do not look as good. Though, according to polling, I don't know if this is a measure of any particularly smart political manoeuvring on the Tories' part, or whether it just shows how entirely absent and cack-handed the opposition has been, but they're still 12 points ahead. Mostly at the expense of Labour, who've also lost a load of support to the Liberal Democrats, a lot more to the Liberal Democrats than they have to the Brexit Party, which is a bit odd. The other thing is, if he goes past October 31st, the Brexit Party is less likely, I wouldn't say unlikely, but they're less likely to ally with him. So I think he's made a rod for his own back there, and I'll be glad to see the back of him. Now, this week we should also see the High Court ruling on whether he did break the law, sprain the Constitution by proroguing for so long in such an explicitly obvious political way. I wouldn't hold too much hope out for that if you are a Remainer like me, because the High Court has a long history of not rocking the boat. When they heard the case about the referendum itself, the only reason the referendum was not overturned was for two very technical points. One, the case wasn't brought quickly enough, but then we didn't know about the law breaking until a certain amount of time had passed. And secondly, the referendum was non-binding, and so far as the law is concerned, so far as the High Court was concerned, there was nothing to overturn because nobody was bound to follow the result. Those two technicalities have allowed the High Court to go, nothing to do with me, gov, and to keep out of it, which is kind of what they do for the most part, unfortunately. Yeah, so I wouldn't hold out too much hope for them doing anything spectacular this week. But you never know. You never know with Brexit. You never know with politics. The UK's constitution has a lot of hand-wavium and shrugging involved with it, so who knows? Who knows? This is a story coming from Manchester, Liverpool, and Wales. Sort of cross-bordery type stuff, but our counties aren't like states, but there are complications and issues because police forces tend to be tied to particular counties, and unless you're really getting into organised crime, I need more sleep. Unless you really get into the sort of organised crime and so on, the more nationwide police don't necessarily get involved. You know, it has to rise to a certain level. But apparently these gangs are going into universities pretending to be students and selling drugs. Why this is news to anyone in 2019, I do not know. This has been going on since... Well, I used to go and visit friends in university while I was still in college, and that was going on. And speaking of college, there was a total acid casualty of a guy who used to be a raver who had been thrown out of the college but would still turn up from time to time, and people would score weed and blotters and things off him. So, you know, this has been going on for a very, very long time, and quite why it surprises anyone, I do not know. It's not really worth the news story. It's kind of obvious. The Guardian has apologised for having one of David Cameron's sort of excerpts from his memoirs in their paper as an editorial, even though it's newsworthy, even though he's a former Prime Minister. And they specifically say he's only ever felt privileged pain over the death of his son. If you may or may not remember, but David Macaroon, David Cameron, actually kind of seemed vaguely human. I think he was the nicer end of the Tory party, not that that's saying much, and he has had genuine tragedy in his life. And not just fucking up the whole Brexit thing and losing power in the Tory party, but genuine hurt. And they actually treated him like a human being before, and then were forced to apologise for it. And it makes it very hard for me to be sympathetic to either side of these cultural conflicts when they refuse to kind of treat each other as human. I don't know. Even the worst person still has a human core somewhere in them. Even Boris Johnson, even Dominic Cummings. The pace of climate change is scary and increasing. A former chief scientist for the UK has said, Professor David King. The number of extreme events and so on has accelerated faster than anticipated, and he's urged the UK to basically bring all its climate change targets forward by about 10 years. But there's argument over how to get people incensed enough to do something without making them so scared and hopeless for the future that they no longer care and become nihilistic. That seems to be a problem, finding the sweet spot. Something we should have been worrying about years ago, but there you go. Of course, we could have been well ahead of the game when it comes to tidal power, but British Nuclear Fuels used to be in charge of approving funding for alternative energy, because nuclear power was taken as alternative energy, and frankly we've got no choice but nuclear power at this point in combination with others. But as an island nation, it's one thing we have a lot of, two things we have a lot of, it's wind and tides. So we should start making better use of that, I think. The wind coming out of Parliament would be a good bet. Sorry I'm rushing through, but I really am short of time and need more rest. I found this really interesting. Right? As we progress to a cashless society, the Royal Mint has decided to make jewellery instead of coins, because people aren't collecting coins so much, aren't collecting money so much. They're not necessarily squirreling away these gold and silver coins that the Royal Mint has produced in the past. And now they're doing things like cufflinks, brooches, that sort of thing. And it's kind of a bellwether for other changes. I just hope we never quite go as far as China with the way they use mobile payments and things for everything. It's really vulnerable to social control, and there's no guarantee that our government, certainly, or our companies and so on are going to be particularly sort of liberal and open to people moving forward into the future. I have to take a break for a second. I think there's a delivery coming. I will be right back. A problem for every games master has always been coming up with adventure ideas. For years now, Postmortem Studios has been helping out with the 100 Adventure Seeds line. These provide adventure ideas for all genres, and you can get them at RPG Now or Lulu.com. At the end of World War II, the Axis and the Allies went to war with A-bombs until nobody was left to fight. In this atomic wasteland, a new breed of rockabilly hero arises. From the gleaming domes of Science City Zero to the sleazy roller derbies of Vegas and the sky fortress of the Fourth Reich, there's a new world for the taking. 45 Psychobilly Retropocalypse, available at Lulu.com and RPG Now.
Aren't you a little tired of so-called horror media about shiny, sparkly, angsty, whiny monsters? I know I am, and that's why I created Actual Fucking Monsters, where you will play an actual fucking monster doing horrible and monstrous things and being tracked down and killed for it. Buy now at DriveThruRPG, post-mort.com or lulu.com.
The Atomic Age, with its A-bombs, transistorized radios, jet engines, and a new breed of dangerous supervillain, requires heroes to face the challenge. That's where you come in. The world needs you, Agent. Agent of Swing. "Rrrr," said the grinder as it chewed its way through Alice, from the crown of her head all the way down to her toes. It ate the lot of her, unfussy, snout to tail, and cleared its plate. It gnashed its way through her dress, her pinafore, her shoes, and her unmentionables. It chewed her hair, devoured her scalp, gobbled up her arms, wolfed down her legs, gorged itself on her torso, noshed on her skin, and gulped her down without so much as a burp to show for it.
Do you like t-shirts?
Yeah, boy!
Do you like games?
Certainly.
Are you perhaps a little bit kinky?
Yes, quite.
Then buy one of our B&D t-shirts at Teespring. Teespring.com/stores/postmortem-studios. You want to be cool, don't you?
Does the word duh mean anything to you?
Sure, you could play one of those hoity-toity horror games where the most horrifying thing that happens is someone wearing a corset who really shouldn't. Or you could grind a zombie's face into a belt sander.
Postmortem Studios sells a wide variety of stock art, well over 500 pieces, many of them by RPG industry veteran Brad McDevitt. These are available for you to use in your personal or professional projects, whether stories or games or anything else. Check us out at rpgnow.com. I'm sorry about that. Yes, that was delivery of cleaning products. Right. So yeah, the last story I was talking about was the Royal Mint making jewellery. I just think that's really interesting, and they've certainly got a lot of skilled engravers and so on. And moving away from that, and like I said, we don't want to end up with China's social credit system, do we? Particularly, that would be bad. Yeah. Right. Moving on. Oh. No, I need something more cheerful, even though that's not the theme of the show. Before I talk about this, I did a really good inappropriate characters stream last night with Pundit and Venger. A few technical issues notwithstanding, I think I've created a more polished show now that YouTube has forced me to screw around with things by getting rid of Hangouts on air. Sorry, I'm bleeping. So yeah, go and check that out. I think we had a good discussion about the whole consent thing, and I think we disagreed with each other in a very polite, jovial and helpful way, and I think that's a model for how people need to kind of talk to each other, you know? Be a bit forgiving, bit give and take. Understand that you're not going to agree. So yeah, I think last night's show was really good. It was a good one to come back to. So I would encourage you to go and check that out and subscribe, as well as subscribing to this channel and my main channel, Postmortem Video. This one's not big enough to have its own special name yet, but you should be able to find it by searching Grimstream. And Inappropriate Characters, not quite big enough to have its own name yet, but again, you should be able to find it by searching Inappropriate Characters. Okay, right, brace. There were attacks on Saudi oil production, and US intelligence shows that Iran was involved. Do we believe that? Do we believe that? On the one hand, American intelligence, almost an oxymoron, sorry, Yanks. American intelligence has a history of either bullshitting directly or being used and twisted to bullshit by the US government. And obviously the 2 minutes hate, though it's more like 8 years hate at a time, I guess, is being directed at Iran. And obviously what we need right now is a new quagmire war in the Middle East. That sounds like a fantastic fucking idea. On the other hand, and to be fair, Iran is suffering under sanctions and so on, and the kind of psychology of politics and so on over there is a bit different. So it's not completely beyond the bounds of possibility that they would do such a thing. It's also not beyond the bounds of possibility that a terrorist group, a successor to Al-Qaeda, or whoever else, there's so many different groups now. It's not beyond the bounds of possibility that they chose to attack Saudi oil production in order to try and provoke a war, because they gain a lot of converts and they even manage to carve out little caliphates and things whenever this kind of thing goes down. But yeah, I think Saudi Arabia's big enough, bad enough, well supplied and armed enough that they can probably take care of themselves, so long as this doesn't get any worse. But I am sure that oil prices will rise. Obviously, that's an extra hit for Brexit, which people need to be concerned about. And I'm sure the war rhetoric will be pumped up, especially as we're kind of well into the primaries at this point. Oil markets, Brent crude jumped 10% to 66.28 a barrel. Biggest intraday surge since 1988. Now, this might not necessarily be bad in terms of Brexit. It's likely to mean shortages and more expensive oil. But if the oil is more expensive, then production is more worthwhile. And that could forestall certain things that were predicted in the Yellowhammer document. Everything comes back to Brexit lately. I'm terribly sorry. It's boring the arse off me as well at this point. I wish it would just go away. Go away and never return. But if you've read the Yellowhammer documents, there was a blacked out section which I thought was something to do with national security. Turns out it wasn't. It was to do with oil and oil production. We've got a couple of refineries here in the UK, but they're kind of edge cases financially. But governments prop up home fuel creation, fuel refining, because they don't want to be dependent on others. It's the same way that what little shipbuilding of any scale that remains in the UK is largely warships, because you don't want someone else making your warships. And that's why they also keep, or have kept in the past, British Steel and life support and so on, because you want to be able to get as many of the components that you're going to use from your own nation because of security concerns and so on. If the price of oil internationally goes up, then home refining remains more financially viable. So that could forestall Section 15 of Yellowhammer. On the other hand, if you're a consumer, it's going to mean higher prices, and then Brexit's going to mean higher prices. Has already meant higher prices. When the pound takes a plummet again, that's going to mean higher prices. But it's good news for those refineries, for the 2,000 people that work there, I think, and for Section 15 of Operation Yellowhammer. But there you go. Remains to be seen what will happen there. But clearly the attacks on the ships didn't work, so now we have something more serious. Bittersweet news, I guess. Rick Ocasek, however you pronounce it, Ocasek, lead singer of the Cars, has died at the age of 75. So he had a reasonably good run for a rock star. It might seem to you that me knowing even who the Cars are might be a little odd, but back in the early days of Euro MTV, quite a few of their songs, their videos would appear. They had a very interesting visual style in their videos. Summer Magic, right, did a kind of pseudo 3D color intensity effect. So at the start of the video, the screen went more green, then it went more red, and if you covered one eye, then the other, and then watched the rest of the video, it was weirdly intense and surreal without the need for drugs. They made a lot of use of early computer graphics, not to the same extent that maybe Dire Straits did or whoever, but they always had a really strong visual style in a lot of their videos. Even did a video with Andy Warhol. Even I think that was Hello. And back in the days of VHS, we only had a handful of music videos in the house belonging to my dad, mostly. We had one by The Cure, which helped give me an abiding love of them, and we had one by The Cars, because bands used to put out actual cassettes with their music videos on them. You could buy an album, and you could watch and listen through that. Talking Heads had a good one as well that we had, but one of them was The Cars. So I do have a soft spot for them, and I'm sad to see him go. Cause of death hasn't been confirmed yet, but rockstar lifestyle, reaching 75, not too bad, all things considered. I'm sad to see him go, but I'm happy that it reminded me that they existed. I'm going to go and binge watch a bunch of their early music videos and so on. More politics, more Brexit. I'm sorry. The Liberal Democrats under Swinson's leadership now have pledged to cancel Brexit if they win a general election, and that passed overwhelmingly at their conference. So we're not just talking about a second referendum or leaving up to the ballot box at a general election. They're saying they will actually just cancel it, revoke Article 50. It's the quickest, but not the most painless way to go about this, I think. It would put an end to it all rather quickly, but my concern about doing that would be that people would feel cheated in the same way that I currently feel cheated because the Brexit vote won due to criminality, lying, data theft, massive overspends by the Leave campaign that we still don't know the full extent of. And I would imagine it would make them feel as angry as I feel. So I don't know that that's the best way forward. I think having a second referendum, a clean and binding second referendum, under full proper scrutiny that was missing last time, I think that either way would settle it for a sufficient number of the population that we could cope, or overturn it with the least possible amount of recrimination. I mean, the Tommy Robinson reporters, he's not even close to reporter, the Tommy Robinson supporters and so on, they're going to kick off anyway, regardless, and they're going to have conspiracy theories about whatever result, but it'll seem more legitimate if we just revoke. But then if we do leave, they're going to start campaigning to return in 5 years. Of course, if we do leave, we will not get the same special status that we've had up until this point. We'll have to accept Schengen, we'll have to adopt the euro, this is the stronger position that the EU has taken with other countries that are applying for membership now, and we'll lose all those special veto rights and so on that we've had. So basically, it's in our best interest to stay. Quite frankly, even if you're pro Brexit, I'm afraid the things that you say are your goals are best served by staying. But there we go. The Lib Dems, they're in an interesting position at the moment because all the Tories that are defecting, even though they come from the left wing of the Tory party, are right wing compared to Liberal Democrats, and they may be bringing support, and they may be dragging the needle of the Liberal Democrats' overall political position to the right. And the Lib Dems gambled everything on coalition government last time, though she's ruling it out because of course she would. And it really bit them in the arse, and it's only Brexit that has reinvigorated them and made them a meaningful political force again. But cozying up too much to the ex-Tories is costing them at the same time. It's if you're a political wonk like me, it's a really interesting political social issue. Moving back to our government, I don't know if you've heard, but the Conservative Party took a BBC story, doctored the headline, and put it out as an advert on social media, or primarily on Facebook. This is kind of straight out of the Dominic Cummings playbook, but it was visible enough people saw it, enough people saw what was going on that it got picked up on, and Facebook has removed that advertisement. If you've got any comments or questions, I'll get to them at the end, but don't feel shy about asking anything. So Facebook, this is another interesting dynamic, right? Because the government had called Facebook in to testify. Zuckerberg didn't show up. The government is not happy with Facebook in any case. So I say the government, that's May's government and Cameron's government going further back. So Facebook may have gleefully glommed on to the opportunity to take revenge here, but I don't think any reasonable person thinks that this is a kosher way to proceed, to take headlines and stories from your national media, which is still nominally at least independent to the government, even though it's publicly funded, to alter the content and then present it as your own, as if it was supporting whatever political point you're trying to make. That's not cricket, right? It may or may not be legal. It seems to have breached the terms of service, but that's the kind of thing that Dominic Cummings was up to for the Leave campaign. It's the kind of thing he's now up to as an advisor to the government. And no, sir, I don't like it, but the law always lags behind technology. We'll see. If any other side does anything similar, I think that's shit too, before anyone accuses me of bias or anything. The Ig Nobles, these are kind of fun. They're like the Darwin Awards for scientists. Scientists who've done research that is considered pointless or stupid or just funny. And some research on testicle warmth has been honoured with an Ig Nobel. We already know, right, that the warmth of your testicles has an effect on your fertility, right, as well as being jolly uncomfortable having Betty Swallocks. But this was to see if there was any difference in the temperature of your testicles from one side to the other. And they found out that, on average, the left testicle is slightly warmer, but only when you have your clothes on. I'd like to see that broken down by which way you dress and which testicle is lower and higher than the other. But yeah, what a load of bollocks. I kill me. Back to universities. Mental health issues is a thing that concerns me, obviously. Students are under a lot of pressure. There's a lot of issues around mental health that particularly affect students. I think we've talked about this kind of obliquely before. But there's been more of a push to provide more mental health support in and around universities because mental health support around the country is quite patchy, and it's a lot easier and better, and for continuity of care and so on, it seems to be better to have assistance on university campuses for people to access more easily. One of the universities over here used to host UK Gen Con, actually, somewhere up north. Fuck, I can't remember the name of it, but it was the suicide capital of the British universities. Let me see if I can find it quickly. British university with the most suicides, because that's a cheery subject for the moment. Bristol's top of the list now, but it wasn't Bristol. That's West Country, not North. This is going to bother me if I don't find it, so bear with me. Oh, Wikipedia's no help. European Gen Con. Loughborough. Loughborough used to be the suicide capital of the British universities. I don't know if it still is. But universities are saying they can't deal with these mental health issues alone. They're working on a voluntary mental health charter, which will mean nothing. But it will make it look like they're doing something. With all this talk about safe spaces and so on, you'd think there'd be more effort in universities to tackle actual, real, genuine, pressing mental health concerns. But it doesn't seem to get the same traction as a safe space with a therapy dog and some crayons, unfortunately. And honestly, mental health issues just aren't that easy to deal with. And it's expensive, takes a long time, and you often don't see much return on investment. But you know, it's people's lives we're talking about. Sticking with universities, for a long time, British universities were considered the gold standard, the best in the world. Then, for quite a long time, American universities, the really well-known, really important US universities, crept to the top and stayed there. Of course, a lot of that's to do with fees and just the general size of the country and the wealth sloshing around and so on. We have tradition, you have money, to put it that way. But Oxford and Cambridge have always been right up there. But in the latest round of global university rankings, Oxford has gone right up to the top of the global university rankings. So well done, Oxford, despite all the stresses and strains of austerity and the Brexit brain drain and everything else that's going on. You made it back to the top of the global university rankings, and I think that's something Oxford and Oxford alumni and so on should all be very happy for. And let's face it, it wasn't going to be Goldsmiths, was it? It wasn't going to be the London School of Economics. It wasn't going to be them. It was going to be Oxford. Trouble with Oxford is it is still very classist. Very classist. It's very difficult to get into if you're remotely working class. My dad briefly studied architecture at Oxbridge, which is a similar kind of culture. Just couldn't get on with it. I've had other friends who've gone to Oxford and found it very difficult because of the culture and the hideboundness of the tradition. Less so Cambridge. If you're interested in what the other most highly ranked universities in the world were, so you've got Oxford, yay Britain, number one. Then the California Institute of Tech, Caltech. So that was number 2. Cambridge, back to the UK. Woot. In at number 3. Well done, Cambridge. Keep it up. Stanford at 4. MIT at 5. Then Princeton, Harvard, Yale, Chicago, and then at the bottom, Imperial College London. But we're still punching above our weight in terms of quality of education. And that's nice to see. Right, that's me done. Don't seem to be any questions or comments. Thanks for watching. I have shitloads to do today, and I'm still very, very tired. So I will see you tomorrow, probably. Zang. Where's my mouse pointer? There you are. 2 screens. Still getting used to it.